This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to The Narrative here on KRSM Radio, where we amplify the voices, stories, cultures, and conversations that are happening in your neighborhood. I'm your host, Andrea Pierre, and I'm happy that today is our Little Moments Count segment. This episode of The Narrative is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative that is focused on helping parents, caregivers, and you learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. Nearly 80% of brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days. And small moments of interaction like talking, playing, reading, and singing help create the pathways that build a child's brain during this early stage of life. And if you want to know more information, you can learn that at littlemomentscount.org. We have 3 distinguished guests today. We have Laura LaCroix-Dalluhn, who is the owner of LaCroix-Dalluhn Consulting at Minnesota Coalition for Family Home Visits. Laura has extensive experience advocating for families, children, and communities, specializing in maternal and child health equity, early childhood services, children's mental health, youth development, and juvenile justice. She enjoys working with community partners and leaders to identify shared goals and solutions and create effective strategies. Throughout her career, she has worked with state and local governments, nonprofits, and philanthropic partners to create equitable places, spaces, and policies. And when she isn't working, she cherishes her family time, travel, music, theater, cycling, and golf. Our next guest is Shashana Skippingday, who is the Director of Programs at Division of Indian Work right up here on Lake Street, so she's very much a neighbor up here on the south side. Shashana comes from a small rural community in northern Minnesota on the White Earth Indian Reservation and currently lives near Minneapolis, Minnesota. She's a mother and healer with a degree in nursing. She is certified and registered as a community outreach perinatal educator, Indigenous doula, and an Indigenous lactation counselor. She is committed to her community and aspires to teach family about the foundational benefits of breastfeeding. Shashana also provides leadership for local and state Indigenous breastfeeding initiatives. She is one of the directors for the board of the Minnesota Breastfeeding Coalition and is a co-leader for the Indigenous Breastfeeding Coalition of Minnesota. She is currently a traditional home birth midwifery student, and her regular job is the director of programs for the Division of Indian Work in Minneapolis. And last but certainly not least is Jocelyn, Pickreign, Children and Youth Services Manager at Simpson Housing Services and Simpson's House Services. So Jocelyn, she has spent the last decade working with children and families. Currently, she serves as the manager of Children Youth Services at Simpson's House Services. I already said that, sorry. She offers evidence-based home visits to families and children under 5 in a variety of programs for families with school-aged children and teens. That's also including like tutoring, mentoring, and education advocacy. She has a partnership approach that helps parents build skills and confidence in navigating the school system and advocating for their children. The department also runs bi-monthly My Time caregiver workshops that combine skill shares and self-care in a format of co-facilitated. And this is also done by the caregivers. Simpson's Writer Circle, a 6-week creative writing workshop where participants produce and publish an original piece of creative work in a bi-weekly reflective practice groups for Simpson case managers. She has a BA from McAllister, St. Paul, and a Master of Public Policy from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. In her free time, she likes baking and hiking her way through all 66 Minnesota state parks. That sounds actually beautiful. Like, wow. No short feats there. So welcome, ladies, to The Narrative. Just really happy to have just a range of services and activities that are servicing our community. And just thank you for being here and for your hard work.
Yeah.
So let's start with just like general questions that we kind of ask everyone that is a part of Little Moments Count. And, anyone can jump in or just give your perspective on these questions as well. Can you, maybe actually I can throw it to you for this one, Jocelyn, just because, you work with families under 5 or working with children under 5. Can you simply just explain that brain science for families in your words? Because, we always talk about 80% of a child's brain architecture that it develops in that first 3 years of life. And, could you just explain that to our listeners, how, in your words, you would do that for your families there?
Sure. I don't know if you've ever seen like an MRI of a baby's brain or of like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old's brain, but it's like all lit up in all these beautiful colors because their little brains are just absorbing everything all the time, and every experience that they have is building their knowledge and their understanding of who they are and how the world works. And so I think we have to remember that babies are experiencing everything for the first time, and every first time experience that we have becomes the foundation for how our brains sort of incorporate those experiences. So just everything that we do in that short period of time has an impact, which can feel overwhelming, but is also really exciting because that means we have so many opportunities to shape babies' brains when they're very young.
And I even feel like that can happen in the womb, and Shashana, like, is there anything that you tell in your work as a doula to the mothers or the parents or the birthing parents as they're, as that baby's developing in the womb, in utero, like how they can even work then and begin that practice then of working with their child?
Yes, exactly. So let me just start off first. Buju, Nino Kazi Kwa Indigo, Makwa Dodam, Gawa Babiganikag and Dunjaba, Kakabikang and Danongum. Thank you for having us on today. And to answer your question, so we as Ojibwe people and a lot of cultures around the world believe that being pregnant is ceremony itself. So ceremony for us is like knowing that these little ones came to us and they've traveled from such a far way away. We welcome and we encourage our families to start singing to our little ones, start respecting yourself like you're in ceremony, eating the healthy foods, developing our relationships with our plant medicines and our fellow whatever we eat. We have to build those relationships. Those are really important. Singing to our little ones right away, and this is going to go on to our next question here. We are all energy, right? Each one of us is energy. We are spirits in a human body on an earth journey. Mm-hmm. And so we use our voices. Our voices are another form of energy, and we use that energy to create love, attachment, and bringing those two things together helps our children's brains grow. We build that connection with that little one, and it's really important for us to start teaching from the get-go. We can start teaching our little ones from the get-go that we introduce them to ourselves, mom and dad, our little siblings and cousins, all our relatives here. We build that connection from the get-go. So we read to our little ones, we read the books, we can sing songs, we can sing traditional songs, and we also can play with them while they're in utero too. So we can play with mama's belly too. It's very fun, exciting.
I love that. I love the way that you describe that as like the energy of it in the family unit and like how important that is. And I'm always jealous of people that can speak multiple languages. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, what do you see, like, what are the long-term education and health benefits from getting those first 1,000 days right? And also, what are the potentials if you're not getting it right? Like, is there a chance for you to get it right later on? You know what I mean? Because sometimes I think we're so hard on ourselves as parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's really important from the get-go, especially when you start in utero. where I started out with the nutrition, getting nutrition. Right now with our program at Division of Indian Work, we have CSA boxes for our families in our pilot program that we have right now. And we get our CSA boxes from Dream of Wild Health. Mm-hmm. Shout out to them, our favorite people out there, Dream of Wild Health, Hope, and everybody out there. Those traditional foods are really important without the preservatives like the chips and the fried foods. Building those connections, all the good vitamins and minerals in there help our bodies to grow, become nourished. Adding in the song to that is really important too. And then when baby comes earthside, and you know me, you introduced me, I'm a lactivist, I'm an Indigenous lactation counselor, so that's really important for me to start education during pregnancy with all our families to support our little ones by breastfeeding. Breastfeeding has so many good components of it for mother and baby. Mm-hmm. And I can go on and on and on about that.
I love that. So going to you, Laura, just with your advocacy and things like that you're doing, you're with the Minnesota Coalition for Family Home Visits, and you're also a consultant, and you own the owner and lead strategist for your company. And you're always advocating for home visits. So why is that so important for families with newborns? And how are you seeing that work really improving the situations for families in Minnesota?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We love family home visiting services, so it's exciting to do this work with people. I think there's a few things that I would love to highlight. Family home visiting with families is really one of our main focuses around that parent-child connection or attachment. Some people talk about it as attachment. But that is ultimately the basis of how we build our own social and emotional development from our various young ages. So how I respond to my child when it's crying, how I respond to my child when I'm frustrated or upset or cooking a meal, that serve and response is what we often call it. When our child, because they don't have words, they're vocalizing and they're using their bodies to communicate to us. How we respond will build a trusting relationship with that child, and when they can trust the adults in their lives, then they know that their needs are going to get met. So that's how we calm them down when they're crying. So we might pick them up, we might rock them. All of those pieces are part of that. Are part of that important few years of their life because they're relying on us for all of that. But I think I was shocked. I was shocked when I learned how important that basic element of parenting and caregiving is to who we are for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. So when we don't have that trust, when that is broken, it can create challenging situations for the child later in life. You might see them having behavioral issues as a toddler or as a preschooler, and a lot of that is built on that trusting relationship with the parent. So that is one of the great reasons to get involved. The other piece is around child development. Many times we aren't as aware of what are the developmental stages of a child, and so we have these doubts in ourselves. Is this normal? Why isn't my child doing this? My neighbor's child is doing this, or my nephew or niece is doing this, and so we help parents understand what are those developmental benchmarks, and if they're not meeting them, what we can do to help out the child. Oh, okay, maybe we need to do a little bit more interaction time with our child, and maybe the food that I'm eating if I'm breastfeeding, or if I'm serving my child if they're eating foods, those things might impact that those developmental stages as well. And then the other piece that I think is really helpful in family home visiting is around meeting the needs of the family. So we know that chronic stress that is associated with being in a low-income family where you're living paycheck to paycheck, that chronic stress or not feeling like you're making it paycheck to paycheck, that chronic stress can be, it can get in the way of us giving to our children. And so as family home visitors, we try to help meet those other needs. We help try to connect families to other resources. So whether it's a food shelf, whether it's an opportunity to go back to school, whether it's an opportunity to find a job, we try to help them connect with resources in their community and not isolate. Because many times when we're feeling stressed and when we're feeling overwhelmed, we pull back and pull away from our community and the resources that are there and think that we don't have it. We don't want people to know we don't have it all together. So we pull away. And those connections to community are just critically important to us as we are parenting our children.
You know, you brought up some really great points, especially just talking about parents and the stress of parents. The Surgeon General really just put out a warning about parents being, his quote was like, exhausted, burnt out, and perpetually behind. And just thinking about our culture of social media already making you feel like you're not making it, you're not good enough, that the way that TikTok, or not only TikTok, but all the social medias, Facebook, all of them, will make you feel like you're just not doing enough. You know, I'm not making gum from scratch for my children, so I'm not doing enough. And, you know, I just think that's really true, and it really hits home because I was already comparing myself to, you know, per se, to the mother that's daughter's walking and reading at a level and has the better stroller than me. And I'm, you know, and now I have to think about the fact that I don't have enough money, or I can't afford this, or I can't afford that. You know, God forbid you feed your kid a French fry. And yeah, it is stressful, you know, and it's a stressful world, a stressful time to live in. And yeah, and I'm just wondering with you all, because you all are working on the front lines, how are you seeing our families in Minnesota? How are you seeing our communities being affected by stress? Are you seeing like an increase? Like, what are you seeing on the front lines here? And like, how is it even affecting you as people who are doing the caregiving as well?
I'll go ahead and start. We see a lot of our relatives, and I mean human relatives, a lot of our relatives all across the city and urban areas resort to other things to help them feel better. And I'm talking about SUDs. I'm talking about substances that are not good for our families, and they resort to those. And those can lead to, it's just our rollover. It can lead to so many different things. And we're not getting, we have not been getting, helping our children like we should be. But we as home visitors, we have this opportunity to create this connection, build a relationship with them, and help them with many different things. And I know this is what we're going to talk about down the road, but doulas are, from my perspective, are there to support emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally. We're there for them during the entire pregnancy. We're there for them after pregnancy. I'm still connected to families years afterwards, just seeing them and knowing them and having that relationship with them. It's helpful. It uplifts them. When you see them eye to eye in the community, they brighten up. They know that they're connected, and if they need anything, we're here for them. We can connect to them. We can connect them to cultural providers, and it's not just Native American cultural providers. We can connect them to resources like you were saying before, and we can connect them to treatment programs. We can get them assessments. We can get them all kinds of supports. Stress, one of the biggest things on Maslow's, and I have all my home visitors ask, do you have food? Is there food in the home? That's really important. Do they even have a home? Are they living in a car? Are they living in a camper? Those are some of the basic things. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of scale, exactly. That's the first thing we ask them is, how are you doing? Do you have any emergency room visits? Do you have food? We have a food pantry at Division of Indian Work. If our food pantry happens to be not open that day, we can refer them anywhere in the city where we can get them food. So, that's just a little bit of what we do at Division of Indian Work. I don't know if you guys want to kick in.
Yeah, what about at Simpson Housing Services? Like, what are you all doing there? Like, what are you seeing with the stress of families?
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing an increase in homelessness generally in our community. And I think in terms of both homelessness and also in kind of this post-pandemic space that we're living in, feelings of isolation are really high. I think being a new parent can be a very isolating experience. Experiencing homelessness can also be a very isolating experience. And people who've experienced homelessness can often feel like, the systems that they were supposed to trust have maybe let them down, or that there's no one who they feel like they can reach out to who's really in their corner. And human beings weren't designed to raise babies in isolation. We're designed to raise babies in communities. And so one of the things that we can do at Simpson is in our home visiting program is, we can help you start building your community. We can be one of those people who's in your corner, who's there to listen to you vent, or be a person who you can be a sounding board, give you space to ask questions without any shame. That feeling that so many parents have where they're supposed to magically know everything as soon as they have a baby, and that's bananas. That's not real life, right? So we can be that space where you can feel like you can ask your questions, and if we don't know the answers, we'll help you figure them out. And that all of the minutia of taking care of a newborn, all of those little things. How much has my baby eaten? How many diapers have I changed? How often are they crying? How much sleep have they had? That fills your brain. That maybe you don't have a whole lot of other people in your life who really desperately want to listen to that, but we do. We as a home visitors, we are so excited to unpack all of that with you. And then as we're doing that with you and we're providing that space, we can also then help you build a larger community, a community that is more sustainable than just us as a service provider, that's more deeply rooted in your neighborhood or in other parts of whether it's your tribal community or your cultural community, so that you have this community that is wrapping around you and your child, even after your child turns 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're no longer visiting your home on the regular.
I love it.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
One other thing that I think that we're seeing with families is the need for health and wellness, and a focus on health and wellness. When we started emerging out of our homes after the pandemic, a lot of things were happening behind closed doors that people didn't know. So Shashana was talking about some of the substance abuse or use that often turns to abuse. But we know that there was an increase in domestic violence and just deep needs in families, and a need to focus on health and wellness, and become more and more comfortable talking about our mental health and wellness, because people are hurting. And instead of reaching out for help when I'm pregnant and I'm afraid that I might, I don't know what I'm going to be like as a parent, I don't want to continue some same things that I had experienced in my own family, all those fears. Or reminders if I was hurt as a young child, and then when I'm parenting, you might get triggered when my child cries a lot and I can't calm them down. That's a lot of what we see with the mental health needs of families. It's all normal, but we need to normalize talking about it. And so grateful that the Surgeon General put out a release it's time to focus on our health and wellness. Families need this. And how can we help all families And especially we do this through home visiting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing that up. I think just learning a lot more about like complex PTSD and like how that really affects you, and you don't realize, if you had been abused or something like that as a young child, or just any part of your life. And then when you have children, how if they're at the same stage when you were hurt or traumatized, like how it can be, like you can relive those moments. That's and how that can really affect you. We're going to need to take a station break, but I just really thank you. What a great conversation we're having. This is The Narrative here on KRSM. We are doing our Little Moments Count segment. We have 3 wonderful experts talking about child development and services that we're doing here in Minnesota, so we'll be right back. And please continue to listen. Welcome back to The Narrative here on KRSM Radio, where we amplify the voices, stories, cultures, and conversations that are happening in our neighborhood. I'm your host, Andrea Pierre. I'm here with Jocelyn Pickreign from Children and Youth Services, who is a Children and Youth Services Manager at Simpson Housing Services, Shashana Skippingday, the Director of Programs at Division of Indian Work, and LaCroix-Dalluhn, who is the owner of LaCroix-Dalluhn Consulting at Minnesota Coalition of Family Home Visiting. And we've been just talking about a lot of things, just about what are going on with our children. It's our Little Moments Count segments, children and families, I guess, and about those first 1,000 days of life and how families have been affected by the current state of affairs going on in Minnesota, our nation, and our world. And I wanted to ask you, Laura, just knowing, how a lot of families are living below the poverty line. With your organization, how are you able to help families that are low income, and are you at your consulting firm are able to assist them?
Yeah, through the Family Home Visiting Coalition, we actually do try to target our low income families. Okay. And and the reason for that is because we know that chronic stress related to household income can have negative impacts on our ability to parent. Doesn't always, and I think that's really incredibly important to say, that income doesn't define how we parent, but it actually, the chronic stress is the piece that we want to try to help families manage through family home visiting. Mm-hmm. So through the coalition, it is absolutely the group of families we want to work with, but income alone is not the driver. I will say then also we, through the Family Home Visiting Coalition, had worked with the legislature to increase funding for family home visiting and increased reimbursements for doulas. I know that Shashana is a doula, but we really wanted to make doula services available to families who were Medicaid eligible, and that is finally coming into practice this year after a law change the year before. So we're excited to see more and more families get resources.
I love that, and I'm glad you did mention Shashana, because being a nurse and being an Indigenous woman, how are you combining your cultural traditions with modern healthcare, like in your work? And I'm just really interested in that as well.
Yeah, so I'll just have to give a little background to that. So, Abraham Folstrom from the early 1900s really kind of like set the standardization for physicians to be able to support people of color, including, and this is good research for you to do, for all the community to research and do, those, they create, it's through the American Medical Association, so including the government, and they were founded by the Carnegie Foundation. They prevented physicians of color, including African American, and they closed a lot of schools because of the standards that they set. So this hindered African American people of color, including Native American communities. Fast forward to the Cochrane reviews, the Cochrane Reviews created many things, and including they are very supportive of doulas for families during pregnancy, labor and delivery, and birth. And how we today, or at least a division of Indian work, we have almost 50 doulas across the state that we contract. One of the things that we do is we provide culturally relevant care. Mm-hmm. Most of our doulas are Indigenous, whether that's being Native American or from Central or Southern America. Nice. What we do is incorporate ceremony. We use our plant relatives, and our plant relatives have a lot of different uses that they can do. Cedar. I'm getting scientific here. Cedar is negatively charged, so if there's something going on in their life, those two negatives make a positive. Mm-hmm. There you go. Cedar has many attributes to it, so we use cedar smudge, we use sage, and we incorporate the medicines, prayer, and song. If the family chooses that. It's totally their prerogative to do that, but we offer that, and we offer the support to our families. So it was, for me as the director of Division of Indian Work, it was important for me for all our home visitors to become doulas. Mm-hmm. So they provide that round up, that overall support for families, and keep it as ceremony. One of the important things for us as Indigenous people is identity from the get-go, and teaching our parents, our caregivers, including grandparents too, is identity of who we are, where we come from, our traditions, our cultures, our stories, our songs are really important, and teaching that to our little ones too, by getting them their spiritual names, their Indian names, and teaching them who they are, because that's really important, and the responsibilities that they have in the community. Who their clans are really important too, and what are their clan responsibilities if they choose that. And that gives the children, families, grandparents responsibility to know and incorporate of leading a good life. And that starts from the get-go. Once we bring we start home visiting for families, mm-hmm. whether it's through any of our programs at Division of Indian Work, and that's what we do at.
Are you noticing more like compliance, like more people coming to the visits, more people coming for like those wellness checkups and things like that?
We are. That's what's written within our grants, and that's what we do exactly. That's one of the things we ask at each of the visits. Have you had an ER visit? When was your last child visit? Mm-hmm. Are your kids up to date with vaccinations? And not everybody gets vaccinations, but we encourage that. And if we explain that, like with the COVID vaccinations recently, those are kind of important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for that answer. As a mother, my mother was a doula too, and we're from Trinidad, and she just was some of her favorite things was to do that. She did that back home, and she did that when she came here once they were starting up doula work back in the United States when she was able to do that.
And that's what we did culturally before colonization.
Exactly.
We were a community. We took care of each other, and we knew our community, and we were able to provide those without having the standards of care set by the government. Yeah.
And the maternal birth rate was very, it wasn't low.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Jocelyn, just about, we are going definitely through a housing crisis, and there's a lot of unhoused children in the state, and I think they're almost like the invisible side of like what's going on with this unhoused crisis going on. And I'm just wondering, how does your program help children under 3 who are unhoused? And what does it look like when you're working with the unhoused families at Simpson Housing Services there?
Yeah, so I think as you said, it can that can be sort of the less known about side of homelessness, and I think something that certainly surprised me, and I think surprises a lot of people, is that on any given night in the state, about a third of the people experiencing homelessness are children under 5. And that's according to a Wilder research study. And we know that homelessness is a traumatic experience, and it's often compounded by other traumas, so violence or mental health, substance use disorders, and systemic racism. I think that's a trauma that's important to call out as well. And trauma at any point rewrites the brain, but trauma especially in early childhood, when your brain is building the architecture that's going to be the foundation for all of the learning that you do for the rest of your life, it really has an outsized impact there. So, having stable housing is the foundation of every other service or intervention that we could possibly provide. Like a child who doesn't have a stable place to live doesn't have a stable place to grow. So at Simpson, all of our home visiting services are coupled with what we call family support specialists, and so every family who gets a family home visitor to focus on parenting and child development is also getting a family support specialist who is helping them with things like rent and tenancy education and financial literacy, access to employment, all of those things that really support a family to maintain their stability, both through the transition from shelter to housing, but then also after they no longer need those supports. Because we at Simpson, we really think about that supportive housing and is the starting line and not the finish line. Like, our dream is for you to live your best, most vibrant life independently of social services. And so that's kind of what we're working towards with families and providing them with secure space to start breaking some of those cycles.
Love that. It seems like just such a hard job. I think even just watching from afar, I feel like I'm far removed a bit, just being here, but, working in social services. I want to know, Laura, how do you ensure home visiting services are reaching, diverse families?
Yeah, we, through the Family Home Visiting Coalition, that was one of our goals, is to make sure we got the services to families needed, and whenever possible, being provided through culturally congruent services providers. So over time, one of the things we did is the way in which federal and state funds came to Minnesota for the family home visiting programs, we shifted that so that nonprofit organizations who often have much more diversity, cultural diversity, and diversity in general on their teams, that they would be able to apply directly for funding from the state. So that shift has been pretty significant to us, to us as a coalition, and then has made some impacts in our communities. Who's applying? Who's delivering the services? We still know we can do better, and are working to think about how do we do outreach in addition to the home visits themselves, right? So a lot of people, hopefully listening today, will be learning about family home visiting and talking to their family and friends about the opportunity. It's all voluntary, and anyone can come in to get services through the organizations here, or through we have a directory on our website that we can post out for people to share. You can find services within this service area.
Where is that direct? Is there a website for that? You can shout that out now if you like, or if you don't have it, we can do it after the break.
It is mnfamilyhomevisiting.org. mnfamilyhomevisiting.org. The first thing you'll see when you come to our website is a 2024 Family Home Visiting Directory. And so you can find services near you. So if you have family members who are pregnant or with young children who live outside of this, radio station service area, that we can still find services throughout the state. So.
Oh, that's perfect. That'll be great for like our listeners that are a part of our KFAI listening audience that's statewide. So, no, that's great. So, mnfamilyhomevisiting.org. So you'll be able to even find like Shashana's organization at Department of Indian Work, or Jocelyn at Simpson Housing Services, or even Laura's Minnesota Coalition for Family Home Visiting's organization as well.
And Dre, can I just add?
Yes.
So I would just want to, in the interest of full transparency, at this moment, Simpson Housing Services, we're only able to provide home visiting to families who are in our housing programs. So what I would say, though, is that if there are people listening who are experiencing homelessness, or who have family or friends who are experiencing homelessness, if they have elementary school age children, I would encourage them to reach out to the social worker at their school. And otherwise, I would also encourage them to contact the Hennepin County Shelter Hotline at 612-204-8200. That's 612-204-8200.
Okay, great. And that's if you're in Hennepin County, but if you are in Greater Minnesota, go to your school counselor, and they should be able to help you, because there's usually a social worker at the school that can assist you with those issues, correct?
And in Greater Minnesota, too, 211. I mean, anyone anywhere in the state can call 211 to get access to whatever shelter resources there are in their area.
Thank you so much for that resource. We're going to actually take our last station break, but we'll be back with these three ladies. You're listening to The Narrative here on KRSM. It's our Little Moments Count segment. One moment. Welcome back to The Narrative here on KRSM. You are listening to the Little Moments Count segment. I have Jocelyn Pickreign from Simpson Housing Services, and Shashana Skippingday from the Division of Indian Work, and Laura LaCroix-Dalluhn, owner of LaCroix-Dalluhn Consulting at Minnesota Coalition of Family Home Visits. And, we're at our last segment here. I can't believe how fast this has gone. I love our Little Moments Count segments. I just learned about great people doing great work for our children in the state of Minnesota. And literally, you three ladies have given me goosebumps. What a invigorating conversation. Hopefully, I don't know if we were able to cover everything, but I think that we just covered so much. And I do want to get into this Advocate's Guide to Supporting Birth Justice. It's the Birth Justice Collaborative. It's a long-term plan for repairing harm in American Indian and African American communities. And it's such a beautiful illustration on here. But who can tell us more about that? Between anyone want to get into it?
I think Laura can start the history. We're a newer partner. Division of Indian Work is a newer partner with Birth Justice Collaborative, but Laura could give a more concise history about it.
All right, Laura, it's your show. Come on.
Yeah, so the Birth Justice Collaborative it has been around since 2022. It is a partnership that grew out of Hennepin County, and there are 6 lead organizations, and we have 3 Native American organizations and 3 African American led organizations as the lead partners, and Division of Indian Work is one of them. Thank you. And we have the NAC, the Native American Community Clinic, and the Minnesota Women Indian Resource Center. We have the Cultural Wellness Center, and we have Northside Healing Center.
Yep.
And You Rock.
And You Rock. Yeah. Correct. So this is a great collaborative focused on helping improve. Oh, why don't you go through those?
Oh, yeah.
Shoshana.
So we have, so BJC has 5 strategic strategies, if you will. We have acknowledging and addressing the impacts of racism, and that's what we do at Division of Indie Work. I'll expand on that more. There's also another strategy, advocate for and radically reform policy and payment. Laura can touch on that. Expand culturally meaningful workforce pathways. Advance and expand anti-bias accountability programs, and also invest in a network of trusted cultural provider and resources. And I'll go ahead and talk about the acknowledge and addressing the impacts of racism. So we actually have a postpartum income pilot at Division of Indian Work and also over at the Cultural Wellness Center. So we are serving, DIW is serving 20 families. Cultural Wellness Center is serving 20 families. And with that, it is a 15-month program. It's actually started in April and for 15 months. We actually use the Family Spirit curriculum with that. We are able to support families with that curriculum, find them resources within the community, what they need. We do assessments after assessments after assessments. We check for depression, we check for safety, we check for many different things. After the lessons, we make sure that the families are totally understanding the lessons. We do parent-child interaction assessments. We also check for substance abuse assessments. We provide CSA boxes for families during the summertime. That's the nutrition. Like I said before, our home visitors are also doulas. So we provide lactation support. We can be there with those families when they were pregnant, labor and delivery and postpartum. And so they provide those doula services too. That extra special care for the families that they may need. And they get to know them one-on-one. But the most important thing as part of this pilot is providing families with a monetary gift. So for 12 months, they'll get $800 a month gifted to them, and the last 3 months, they'll get $300 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like the community, too, is just so important. I just love that there's new spaces. As someone who kind of felt uncomfortable in ECFE, like I think something like this would have been like a lifesaver for someone like me. We only got 5 more minutes left, but I do want to let you talk about your piece. Did you have more to say about it as well, Laura, or no? Or, I do feel like you succinctly explained it, though, but I know you said you wanted her to say something.
Yeah. I think there's the on the policy piece, just some pieces to highlight because it nicely connects to the supporting families in that first 1,000 days of life. We were able to, the Birth Justice Collaborative, we were able to go to the legislature to get funding for an African American focused home place. That'll be that they will begin piloting. I believe it's in April of 2025, and this is really focused on providing support to African American families when they're pregnant, and then in the postpartum period. Thinking about cultural healing. It's a safe space where people can come in and get care and resources and knowledge and connect with one another. Super excited about this. And then the other piece is the American Indian Focused Birth Center. So there are 2 planning grants, but really holding the idea and the importance of culture as we build our identities, as we start our lives, how critically important this is, and very excited for our communities here, both our Indigenous community and African American community in Hennepin County.
Is there a website or something that people can?
Yeah, it's birthjusticecollaborative.com.
Yep.
birthjusticecollaborative.com.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, what a great show. Probably one of my more favorite ones of Little Moments Count. Don't tell the others. But I just really want to thank you, Laura and Jocelyn and Shashana, just for being here. If you want to hear a repeat of this, you can find that on littlemomentscount.org. But I just want to thank you, listeners, for listening to the narrative. Of course, I'm repeating myself a lot today, but you can hear a recording of this show at littlemomentscount.org/podcast. And if you want to know more about Little Moments Count, you can visit their website at littlemomentscount.org. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to the narrative. There will be a replay of this show on our sibling station, KFAI 90.3 FM, on Wednesday at 1 p.m. And of course, I'm live here on KRSM Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're 98.9 FM. We're a social enterprise of Pillsbury United Communities. And if you have a show idea or if you want to be a guest, you can let me know. My email is andreap@pillsburyunited.org. And I just want to tell you, ladies, again, thank you so much for everything you're doing. I just really, really appreciate you all. And wow, what great work. Please continue. And I'm just glad that you guys are here and that your staff is all here helping us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm. All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.